Members, it's already the scheduled time for our meeting. Welcome to the meeting of the Subcommittee to study the proposals for improving district governance and related matters. This is the second meeting of the Subcommittee. We've only got one thing on the agenda, and that is meeting with the administration. We'll continue to discuss the administration's LegCo brief. Last time, save for myself, all members have had a first round, and I will now take my turn, and then we will continue with the second round of questions. Please invite the administration to join us. Welcome, Ms. Alice Mack, and also Mr. Eric Zhang and their teams. We will continue with our discussion of the administration's paper for the panel, for the subcommittee. I hadn't asked questions last time. I was the only one who was not included in the first round, so I have 5 minutes for both questions and answers. Secretary. Now, to fully implement the principle of patriots administering Hong Kong, the administration is going to set up the eligibility review mechanism with the committee to vet the eligibility of candidates and also members elected. And when necessary, the committees will also be consulted. In Hong Kong, we've already got an eligibility review committee to examine the eligibility of CE candidates and also candidates of C election committee subsectors. So you are not going to entrust the existing committee to review the eligibility of future candidates. What are the reasons for that? Given that both committees will be chaired by the CS4A. And now, I'd like to know whether both committees will be applying the same criteria governing the principle that only patriotic persons would administer Hong Kong. Now, we are going to set up a committee to review the eligibility of candidates. Now, for the first committee, they were set up under Annexes 1 and 2 of the Basic Law, which has set out very clearly the scope of work of the committee, and that is candidates for the C election, EC subsector elections, and LegCo elections. Given that there are already provisions in the Basic Law, we have to comply with the provisions, and to ensure that only patriots can administer Hong Kong, we need to have a mechanism to review the eligibility of candidates, and therefore we're going to set up another committee to do that. This is totally in line with the requirements of the Basic Law. As regards the criteria, I think they are more or less the same as the other committee, that is whether they're going to uphold the Basic Law and pledge allegiance to the Hong Kong SAR. All right, that's clear. Secondly, under Annex C of the magical brief, now there are going to be 3 tiers of structures. First, there will be this task force on district governance to be chaired by the CS4A, and also the steering committee on district committees, and also district councils to be chaired by district officers. Now, I'd like to know the relationship between the second and the third tier. Now, I'd like to know whether district officers will be on the task force on district governance, or are we talking about the deputy secretary for Home and Youth Affairs Bureau? Now, under para 8, then there will be a task force to consider the relevant issues. Now, what about the special group and also the steering committee on district administration? I'd like to know the relationship between them. Now, for Annex C, well, it represents the final objective of our review. That will be the organization structure. Of course, we want to enhance and revamp or reform the district councils. We also enhance the governance effectiveness of our district. So you see that we have 2 high-level leading committees. First is the steering committee on district governance, chaired by the CS, and task force on district governance, chaired by the DCS, deputy CS. And then there will be representatives from departments such as FEHD, LCSD, and also district officers. The Home Affairs Department will be the secretariat. Can I continue? Yes, please. And how will this structure operate? Now, for policies that involves all 18 districts, then perhaps it will be discussed or decided by the steering committee on district governance, chaired by the CS, for instance, in all 18 districts. In 2003, after the SARS outbreak, the economy was poor, and Mr. Tong, the then CE, proposed activities to stimulate the the economy of all 18 districts. And then the task force on district governance will discuss how that will be implemented, and the actual execution will be done by district officers. Thank you. We'll continue with our second round, 4 minutes each. Mr. Chan Hakan. Thank you. Thank you. This is my second round. Now we have advisory structures. We have district councils, firefighting committee, DFCC, and also care teams to serve different needs groups. So if these 5 bodies can work together, and if they can do their respective duties well, then it can be very good. But if there is no coordination among them, or if there are conflicts in their operation, you can imagine the chaos. Members of the public don't know where to turn to if they have problems, and when departments have to address district matters, the structure is also not very efficient. So can you tell us how these 5 organizations are going to work together? Or will there be someone to coordinate among them? Now, for DFCCs, DFSCs, and also care teams, in fact, the duties can be taken up by district councils as well. Does that mean that in the new district councils, their roles and functions may duplicate with that of the DFCCs and DFSCs? If so, can district councils continue to discuss these matters on the ground that there are already two other organizations to attending to these matters? So if DCs are not discussing these matters, what else or what functions are left for them? There are questions that the future district councils will have fewer roles and functions than the current ones. Can you tell us the difference between the two? First, the new DCs are not going to have fewer roles and functions. Our purpose is to strengthen the role of DCs under Article 97 of the Basic Law. They have to advise the government on district matters. So if you look at the organization structure plan in Annex C, you can see how our district councils can discharge their duties better. Perhaps the first and second questions by Mr. Chen can be answered together. Many people ask about the division of labor between these organizations. Now, after rationalizing the structure, our purpose is to ensure that these 5 bodies can strengthen their coordination. DOs will be chairman of DCs, and when we have policies requiring the district councils to explain to the public, such as municipal solid waste charging scheme, a matter very close to the community. Now, if it is found the members of the public do not know about the operation of the charging scheme, such as the use of the garbage bags, etc., then the district officers, as the commander of care teams, will direct or ask the care teams to advise members of the public on how to deal with those garbage bags and the fact that they cannot be sold to another party, etc. So there will be better coordination. Does that mean that in future district councillors cannot tell members of the public how to use those bags properly if they are approached by members of the public? Of course, the answer is no. Well, a district council may not be able to cover the whole district, and care teams will be there to help. Mr. Lai Tong Kwok. Thank you. Under Section 61 of the current DCO, the roles and functions of district councils are set out, and paragraph 5 of the paper has also got it set out. Now, affecting on matters affecting the well-being of the people in the district. This is rather general, and as a result, in the past, we saw people with ulterior motive and to oppose Hong Kong and China using the loophole to oppose the government and to stand in the way of the government's administration. We're here to reform district councils. I'd like to ask the administration how it plans to amend the functions of DCs as set out in the DCO so that it can really put into practice Article 97 of the Basic Law, and then district councils can continue to be a platform for collecting public opinions so as to serve as good reference for the government's governance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lai. I agree. Mr. Lai pointed out that paragraph 5, we are talking about Section 61 of the DC ordinance, and it is rather broad-brushed, and we're going to amend the ordinance. So in paragraph 15 of the paper, we says that we can further fine-tune certain functions. We hope to strengthen the DC's role as an advisory body for the government. And at the same time, in our proposed provisions, we would also stipulate clearly that district councils will be consulted by the government for district matters, and that is set out in Article 97 of the Basic Law. So we will be amending the legislation in accordance with that. So paragraph 15, 1 to 9, will be written into the law. And like what the member said, people might take advantage of certain wordings of the law. And at the same time, we'd like to strengthen the functions of the DCs. The aim of our exercise is to help district councils to give full play to its function as an advisory body for the government, so that we can tap the pulse of the community. We'll be able to know about public sentiment, so that we can implement effective policies effectively to benefit the public. I have a follow-up question. Paragraph 24 of the paper, or rather paragraph 26, is about eligibility for standing for elections. And one of the criteria is that the candidate should be nominated by 3 members of each of the 3 committees. And for those who would like to stand for elections, they might not necessarily be members of the 3 committees. Now the question, if someone wants to stand for election, he may know about these 3 committees, but he may not know how to approach them. So what measures will the government have to make sure that those who would like to stand for elections can actually approach or reach the members of the 3 committees who can nominate them? Yes, we will put in certain arrangements. The secretariat of the 3 committees are under the HAD, so the HAD can help refer certain requests. Say, for example, if the candidate would like to liaise with members of the 3 committees, the secretariat can help. Mr. Zhang, do you have any supplement? No? Next one, Mr. Stanley. Chairman, I would like to follow up on about a question on national security. As we all know, for this current term of the DCs, basically, the DCs are failing in their role. After the Black Clat violence in 2019, we see problems in the DCs, and the full DC meetings cannot be held. So I think a guiding principle will be to uphold national safety in our reform exercise. The chairman asked about the DC Eligibility Review Committee and its composition. How will it be composed? How can we have confidence that its composition is such that it can help safeguard national security? And we also know that for nominations, we have to involve members of the 3 committees, DFCC, DFSC, and areas committees, and members of these committees have to make the nominations. But for the members of these committees, have they been subject to review in terms of national security? Because after all, they will be responsible for nominating the candidates for DCs. Now, for someone who would like to be a candidate, or he may claim that he doesn't have any experience in politics, how would that eligibility review committee check on the background of this candidate? How can it ensure that this person will not jeopardize national security? So 3 questions there. Mr. Deng, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Ng for your questions. First, about the DC Eligibility Review Committee and its composition. The CS4A will be the chairman, and then there will be 2 to 4 official members and 1 to 3 non-official members. This is in line in what is set out in Annexes 1 and 2 of the Basic Law. That is in line with the Candidate Eligibility Review Committee. Like in my response to the chairman, the arrangement will be similar, and the criteria will also be similar. So they will be examined on whether they will make an oath and swear allegiance to the Hong Kong SARG. Now, for the 3 committees, the members have not gone through a process of eligibility review, but when the government appointed the members to the 3 committees, we have internal procedures to go by. We make sure that these people are patriots and have an affection for Hong Kong. And if a candidate has never taken part in politics before, then we will look at the candidate's deeds and words and behavior, and we will look at relevant information about him or her. We will collect information on the person to check on him. I think our mechanism has worked well so far. Thank you, Mr. Zhang. Mr. Kissen-Yang. Thank you, Chairman. Last time, I said that I really appreciate the performance monitoring mechanism, because this mechanism can make sure that the district councillors are performing their duties. And then there is a negative list listing out 11 misdeeds, but these may not be exhaustive. Would you be reviewing the negative list regularly? And under what mechanism would you actually trigger the working of this negative list? And also, my other question is about point 4 under the negative list, and that is violating the laws of Hong Kong and being convicted, including suspending sentence. And for disqualified district councillors, they might be meted out a sentence of 3 months imprisonment. I agree that whoever violates the law should be disqualified immediately. Very often, the imprisonment sentence is less than 3 months, and then so the relevant district council can still stay within the DC, and this is undesirable. So I think that if possible, the district councillor should be disqualified once he or she breaks the laws. But as to whether there should be a mechanism for an appeal, we should consider that. If there are less serious violations, say, for example, violating traffic offences. So for these cases, I think discretion should be exercised in handling those. So how would the mechanism be like? Yes, Chairman, I can address that question. Let's take a look at paragraph 41. It already sets out that for this negative list or the guidelines setting out the standard of performance required of DC members, the law will say categorically that the SHYA will have the power to revise the guidelines. We will review from time to time whether the guidelines can really be implemented, and like what you said, the negative list will be subject to review. Say for some of the misdeeds which cannot really be implemented well, then we would take a look again, and the SHYA will be empowered to formulate the guidelines and revise the negative list. Now, the member referred to point number 4. Under existing laws, how will we, under what circumstance we will disqualify the district councillor? Maybe the district councillor suffers from mental illness, he's gone bankrupt, or he has joined the government, or he's been handed a over 3 months imprisonment sentence. Then he will be disqualified. But then someone may break the law, but then his imprisonment sentence is shorter than 3 months. But then the district councillor is still not living up to the expectations of the public. Well, from the time of his violating the law to him being convicted, there is still a time cap. He will still stay in his post, right? So for the negative list, if a district councillor violates the laws, he may be subject to the investigation by a supervisory committee, and if he is not living up to the expectations of the public, his duties may be suspended, and we will also be holding back his remuneration. So I think that's a more effective way to deal with behavior which is falling short of the public expectation. Dr. Ngan Man-yu, like what Mr. Kisan Yang said, we have a monitoring mechanism under the proposal. We also have a sanction system to make sure that district councillors will deliver due diligence. But will that be an incentive or reward system for district councillors so that the district councillors can really strive to work beyond what is required of the KPIs? Well, the secretary said that for the district officer, if he does his job well, he will be promoted. But for the district councillors, there is no such mechanism. So what measure will you implement to encourage district councillors to do better than what is required under the KPI? Secretary, well, the best reward for a district councillor is that he is given due recognition and support by members of the public. If a district councillor delivers due diligence, well, no matter whether what channel is it, by which channel is it returned to the district council, I believe that if he does well, he will be supported by the electors. But if it is appointed member, then the government will continue to ask him to serve the community. Now, all of us have worked in the district for a long time. For a district councillor who is dedicated to community work, the biggest reward is support from the public. And I believe district councillors will deliver due diligence. Dr. Lawai Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. The government has put forth a proposal to improve governance at the district level, and maybe we are concerned about the how district councillors are returned to the district councils. There seems to be a lot of discussion on that front, and that is all understandable. But then, for this proposal, there are different dimensions of discussion. Now, the CS4A and also the DSC and the district officer will play their respective roles, and they will perform duties in relation to district governance. And then there is also another dimension. And like what I said in the last meeting, we are not looking just at the district councils. We also have the 3 committees and also the care teams. And not only that, Ms. Mack, you were once a district councillor. You know well about this. At the district, there might be other district organizations which are related to people's livelihood. For example, the sports associations, cultural associations, etc. So what is the relationship between these organizations and the district councils under the proposal?
I was appointed to the Sha Tin District Council for many years, and I saw that allocations of funds to these organizations had to be decided by the district council. Usually, the activities are planned to provide quality and healthy activities for the community. Usually, they got the support of the district councils. But then, when there were extreme politics in district councils and with the obstruction of the opposition camp, funding support to these organizations were greatly affected. Of course, this should not happen in the future, but I'd like to know the relationship between district councils and these organizations or associations. And then when the district councils used to have some say over district minor works projects, for instance, how money should be spent, etc. I'd like to know the future arrangement. Thank you. Ms. Mack. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dr. Low. Dr. Low talked about the funding power. In fact, back in 2021, the authority was subsumed under the HAD. And as for arts and cultural and sports associations, they started to appear in the 1990s. As we all know, we understand that the objectives of these organizations is to promote sports, recreational, and arts and cultural activities. Now, they are being funded by district community committee, district of the HAD. They were passed, approved. The funding approval was given by HAD, and then for a while, the power was handed to the district councils. But in each year's funding for district councils, the amount reserved for these committees have been determined. But then things were a bit chaotic in the past. Now in future, district arts committees and sports committees will continue to receive funding for activities to promote arts and sports. For district minor works projects, in 2017, the power was returned to the HAD or the district officers. Now, usually it is for district councillors to recommend a particular type of project to be taken, but the monitoring of such projects is usually done by district officers. In future, district councils will still play an advisory role. For instance, if they believe that certain facilities are needed in a particular district, they can reflect their views to the district officers, so the district officers concerned can carry out these projects. Now, because of the disturbance in the past, the district officer or the government will be responsible for funding support of these committees. I have no objection to that. But in the past, district councils enjoy some say over the use of funds. It was okay at first. It was just because of the opposition camp that things changed. In future, even though district councils are not directly responsible for approving funds, they are still there to advise the district officers, and I hope they can have a beneficial and interactive relationship with the arts committee and sports committees. Yes. If we look at Article 97 of the Basic Law, district councils are just advisory bodies. They do not have any power to approve funding, and therefore the power still rests with the administration. The fact that they are not organs of political power has already ruled out their authority to approve funds. Mr. Tommy Zhang, I'm sorry, I was chairing another meeting when this subcommittee held its first meeting, and I am also having another meeting next door, the Health Services Panel. Now, I'd like to ask about the performance monitoring mechanism. I support this. But then the District Council, the LegCo and the ExCo do not have a similar mechanism. And even during the days when we had the Urban Council and Regional Services Council or Regional Council, we did not have such things. And then this mechanism will be accused of being an instrument or a tool to oust a district councillor that the government doesn't like. I think you should have a very clear criteria, right, for performance falling short of public expectations. Now, even if I have I attend a meeting and I express myself very clearly and properly, I can still be accused of being falling short of the public's expectation. So, will you put down the work of the performance monitoring mechanism in the future? For instance, if a bottle of wine is placed on the table, even though we don't know whether the member concerned has drunk it or not, it is an inappropriate way of conducting himself. Even a legislator should not do that. I'd like to know whether you will make it clear, because investigations will be done under the leadership of the district officer. Can you tell us under what circumstances will the investigation be initiated, and is there any appeal mechanism? Of course, the appeals should not be handled by the district officer. It may be by another government official or even the judiciary. Do you have such a mechanism? Well, let me explain more about the performance monitoring mechanism. This is in response to public's aspiration that they want a district council that can discharge its duty properly. And so a district councillor's performance can be monitored during his office. Now, when there is a petition jointly signed by 3 members of that district council together with the DC chairman, or if a motion is put forth by a DC member and is supported by more than half of the members present, then the supervisory committee will be appointed. It's not a permanent establishment and will only be set up when an investigation starts. Now, there will be 5 members in the committee, with the 4 being non-DC members of the district council concerned. As set out in the paper, allow me to continue, Chair. We are going to empower the Secretary for Home and Youth Affairs to formulate and amend the relevant guidelines. The guidelines will have a list of negative behavior. There are 11, according to the paper, but the list can be amended or with items added or deleted. For instance, if the member has disobeyed the standing order and has failed to rectify the behavior upon advice and warnings. For instance, if a member is advised against putting an alcoholic drink in front of him and he has refused to rectify the behavior even upon the advice of the chairman, then the committee will investigate and decide whether the member should be sanctioned. The penalties can include a warning letter and a suspension of his duties and suspension of his remuneration, and also a monthly provision. The member may say that it's not fair. He is only trying to market the product for another party, and he has no intention to disrupt the meeting. He can then appeal to the DS4A. We will make it clear in our guidelines how an investigation will be activated, and also we will set out the list of negative behavior. So will the DS4A consider appeals on his own? Will he be supported by any other members on his own? Ms. Mack, you can continue to answer our questions, even though the time is up, unless I stop you, because I think it is important to deal with these questions from the outset. So you can continue unless I stop you. Third round, 4 minutes for each member as well. Mr. Chen Ying, thank you, Chair. I have a question about nominations. There are 2,500 members in the 3 districts, about 138 per district, though it may vary from district to district. Now, DC member, a candidate must have nominations from 3 members from each district in order to be validly nominated. But then, will a candidate be getting too many nominations so that that can deter or affect another candidate from joining the race? For instance, you can say that the floor is 3 members and the ceiling is 30. Otherwise, if a candidate has secured the support of all the members of these districts, then another person will not stand any chance of being nominated. Your consideration is very correct. Our intention is to have nomination from 3 to 6 members of a district committee. Now, for eligibility review mechanism, now, regardless of the way of nomination, a candidate will have to go through the eligibility review mechanism. Now, if a member fails or a candidate fails the eligibility review, will justifications be given? Because remedies may be made afterwards. For instance, because of conviction of a minor offense, will you give a person another chance to stand in the race again? And then you can set a time frame. For instance, he can only be allowed to stand after 5 to 10 years, so that it can be more transparent. And will you allow a person a second chance? Thank you. Secretary, thank you. For eligibility review, if the DC Eligibility Review Committee considers that a certain candidate hasn't fulfilled the requirement that he has to uphold the basic law and bear allegiance to the SAR, usually reasons will be given. And if the DCERC has confirmed that a person doesn't uphold the basic law and bear allegiance to the Hong Kong SAR, then he cannot take part in the DC election in the coming 5 years. Now, for national security concerns, I can understand, but if the reasons are other than NS concerns, can the candidates be informed of the reasons?
We're adopting the same approach as that adopted for the Candidate Eligibility Review Committee. If the reason is not related to national security, then the reason will be specified for the candidate to know about. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong. The reform of the DC, well, one of the measures is to appoint the district officer to be the chairman of the DC. The district officers has the power and all the resources, and he is responsible for overseeing the performance of the district councils as well. So he has heavy responsibilities. In order to enhance district governance level, well, the key lies in whether the district officer has the capability to resolve district issues. So I think it is important that we appoint the right district officer, and the district officer is at a rank of D2 in the civil servants establishment. Some colleagues have mentioned whether we should revisit the ranking of this important position. I believe the government will consider. Now, going by AO's usual practice, they will be redeployed or posted to another post once every 2 to 3 years. But we know that it takes time for the district officer to build relationship with stakeholders in the community. If the district officer is posted elsewhere in a short time, that's not desirable. But if the district officer is to stay in the same post for 4 to 5 years without any promotion, then nobody is willing to take up the post. So for this important position, there are suggestions of maybe asking politically appointed officials to take up this position rather than a civil servant to take up the position. So this is an important position. How can you ensure that the district officer can stay in his post to build rapport with the district representatives and also help with enhancing the efficiency of district governance? Well, in the many consultation sessions we have, and also at electrical meetings, and also in meetings with different sectors, many people have spoken about the positioning of the district officer. I emphasized many times that we will find the right persons to take up the post of the district officer, and we don't depend on the district officer alone to do all the work at the HAD and also the HYAB. We work together as a team to deal with district matters. Given that our team will have good collaboration, and also we will be appointing the appropriate civil servant to take up the post of the district officer, we believe that we can enhance the efficiency of district governance. Many people ask that if the district officer may be posted elsewhere, is there a continuity? In the civil service establishment, because everything is written, there are records, so that will be conducive to continuity. Now, if a non-civil servant is the chairman of the DC, then, well, this chairman may not be writing everything down for passing on to the next chairman. So if we have a civil servant serving as the chairman of DC, then we can ensure that there is continuity in what we do. Now, after the new proposal is implemented, will there be any further changes? Like what Mr. Chen said, some people asked whether the rank should be upgraded. And what about the assistant district officer? Should we increase the number? And should we also be increasing the overall establishment in the district office? Or should there be another level above the district officer? There are a wide range of views. As we implement the proposal, we will examine all these suggestions. Our aim is to enhance the efficacy of district governance, and we will put in the necessary arrangements based on the prevailing circumstances. Now, Mr. Chen, For policy implementation, what matters most is that members of the public can really feel the benefits for themselves. I'm not against civil servants taking up the post of district officer or chairman of the DCs, but I'd like the two secretaries to think about whether, the district officers should also be politically accountable official. So this is my suggestion. I hope that the two secretaries can consider this. Any response? I believe that the chief executive will think about it, because Mr. Chan said that he is really above, the chief executive is above everyone else. I don't think the CEO will agree to that. Well, what I meant is that the chief executive is forward-looking and he is very capable. That's what I meant. Yes, we will consider the members' views. Mr. Gary Chan, thank you. This is my third round. Just now, some members talked about the DC's authority to allocate funding. And I agree that the government should follow the provisions in the Basic Law. This is the local advisory body. It should not be given the authority to allocate funding. In fact, for the current term, DC, they've been engaging in very outrageous acts. Some DC members were allocated funding to publish leaflets advocating Hong Kong independence. And then some DC members voted against allocating funding for organizing a dragon boat races. This is outrageous. And for the DFSC, because most members are the pro-establishment camp members, so some DC members rejected funding application for funding for organizing rural activities. So this is very politicized. And I think it is reasonable for the authority to, the administration to take back the power to allocate funding. But then in the past, there were district minor works, and there are also activities with local characteristics, which whose funding was allocated by the DC, like dragon boat races and other traditional festivals organized by the Eastern District. So in the future, if district councils would like to organize district activities with local characteristics, where should they get the funding? And what about district minor works? Who will allocate the funding to the DCs to work on these district works? And then for the funding, will the funding be allocated evenly among the 18 districts? Will Sha Tin get more funding because of it has a larger population size? And then Wan Chai will get less funding because of its smaller population. Well, the power to allocate funding has been returned to the HAD in 2012. So the district officer will help allocate funding for different district activities. Perhaps I will defer to the director to talk about the current practice. Yes, director, please. For community involvement programs, every year we've got $300 million, and the amount is not distributed evenly among the 18 districts. As to the funding, it depends on the needs of the different districts. And the same goes for district minor works. Before 2021 rather, as pointed out by Mr. Chan, the situation was very undesirable. For projects which warrant our support, the funding for these projects were vetoed, and there have been the wrong purchases of face masks and so on. So in 2021, and by the end of 2021, in October, in fact, the power to allocate funding was handed back to the district officer. While the district organizations could continue with the application for funding. It was just that the district office, which was the body responsible for approving the funding, and this practice will continue. When the district office makes a decision, will there be a mechanism, say the district council will be consulted before a decision is made? So, well, that will be written clearly in the rules to be promulgated in the future. Mr. Stanley Ng. I would like to follow up on the issue of national security. The present system was designed based on loopholes identified in the past or risks identified in the past. Well, can the administration tell us what you foresee as risks in the future? And can you tell us how your system will help avert national security risks? We should adopt some bottom line thinking, and that should be incorporated in the design of our system. Mr. Zhang, thank you. Mr. Ng, for your question. The Chief Executive and also the Secretary for Security have emphasized one many times that now we are advancing from chaos to stability and from stability to prosperity. But then, well, this is hard to come by, but we should not lower our guard. There are still anti-Hong Kong, anti-China forces, and they are eager to wreak havoc in Hong Kong. And again, so that's something to worry about. So we should have a sense of crisis, and we should have bottom line thinking. We must be vigilant and be alert to national security risks. I'm not a national security expert, but there are indeed risks. There might be hostile forces which are trying to make use of Hong Kong to jeopardize the security of our country. We cannot underestimate such risks. There might be also agents for these forces in Hong Kong. They might also work through the districts and try to disrupt our policy, implementation or governance, and tarnish our image. So we cannot rule out all these. We have never underestimated the national security risks we face. We must strengthen our efforts in safeguarding our national security. So it is important for us to uphold the principle of patriots administering Hong Kong. We lacked in the past an effective mechanism to safeguard national security, and that is because we don't have a system whereby patriots are administering Hong Kong. So whether it's presidency or director shall, in order that there is steadfast and successful implementation of the principle of one country, two systems, we must have we must abide by the principle of patriots administering Hong Kong. So we would make sure that we have stringent eligibility review of the candidates standing for DC elections.
Dr. Hui Simon Lee, second round, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chair. This may not be a question per se, but I have some suggestions. In para 7.5, there is a point about strengthening district governance, and a lot of work will be done by the Steering Committee on District Governance and Task Force on District Governance. But we have to bear in mind that there are 18 districts in Hong Kong with their unique characteristics. It's good that we view such matters at a macro perspective, but we should bear in mind that we need to cater to the characteristics of a particular district in terms of their demographic makeup, the geographical conditions, etc. While it's good to have a macro view of district matters, we must not overlook the individual differences of our districts. Ms. Mack, thank you, Dr. Lee, for your reminder. In considering how we can improve governance at the district level, we have mentioned a number of times in our paper that we must give regard to the different circumstances of the 18 districts. And therefore, when the district officer, as chairman of the DC, determine the agenda or the work plan for the district, we have to bear in mind the needs of a particular district. For instance, if we have a district in the new territories, the chairman may require district councillors to come into contact with the rural residents, and if there are fishermen in the district, then they may have to approach a fisherman. But in industrial and commercial areas, the residents are mainly working population. The working population is higher, and therefore they have to cater to that. So in working out the guidelines, we will bear in mind the characteristics of different districts. Any follow-up? I have two questions. First is for Mr. Zhang, and that is the election expenses. Now, instead of 452, there will only be 44 geographical constituencies competing for 88 seats. Some members asked last time the amount of election expenses. Perhaps you have yet to come to a decision. There was no concrete figures given to us. So for different constituencies, we have direct elections and also indirect elections. Given that the size of the electorate will be different in different constituencies, will there be different allowances for the election expenses? Indeed, for direct elections, because the constituencies will be much bigger than the past, election expenses will have to be increased. Well, one consideration is to increase it proportionally, and we will also bear in mind the inflation rate. The election expenses will be adjusted accordingly. When we scrutinize the bill in a Bills Committee, the information will be given to the Council for consideration. And as for the district committee's constituency, we have another way of calculation that will have regard to the actual expenses and also the number of electors. We will have a more practical way of calculating the election expenses. Again, details will be given to the Bills Committee. Thank you. My second question is also for Mr. Zhang. there are 472 seats in the future. And the addition or deletion to different districts are different. For Eastern District, 3 less, and Central 5 more, and Kwun Tong the same number of seats. I'd like to know the basis for determining the number of seats in each district. What are the bases? Is it based on the population size? Ms. Mack. In forming district councils, we want district council members returned from different constituencies and channels. So we will consider the proportion and also the population size in adjusting the number of seats in a district. Now there will be district council members returned from 3 different channels, and that will form the basis for determining the number of seats in each district. Mr. Chen Chunying, I'd like to ask about the supervisory committee. According to Ms. Mack, there can be 2 ways to set up the committee. One is by a joint petition from 3 members of a district council, and the second is a motion is put forth by a DC member and supported. Now, for the first way, you only require 3 signatures, and for the second, the threshold is much higher. There need to be support by more than half of the members present. Why is there such a big difference in the threshold? And I was told by the community, by a member of the community, that after district councils are formed, they become friends, and it may be very embarrassing if 3 DC members' signature are required to set up a supervisory committee. Can we let the district council, district officer to take the lead, and we can have an executive-led arrangement so that the setting up of this committee will not be initiated by fellow district council members? It's exactly due to the reason mentioned by Mr. Chen, and that is whether district councillors will take the initiative to complain against their fellow members, and therefore an investigation can be initiated when the DC chairman has obtained the joint signatures of 3 DC members. And there may also be the case when the DC member really favors a particular member. So no matter how many members have petitioned for setting up the committee, he will not initiate investigation. So for the first option, joint signatures of the chairman and 3 DC members. This will allow the DC chairman to have certain degree of initiation. And then people may say that how come only the chairman can propose the establishment of such a committee, and so the committee can also have some say. Anyway, it is just a way to start an investigation. The committee will comprise 5 members, with 3 being non-DC members. So the point is to ensure that under the mechanism, all district council members can exercise due diligence. It is important to let the public see that from a complaint to an investigation to supervision, there is a proper procedure. There must be majority support in the DC. Yes, the motion can be moved by a DC member, and it has to be voted on and with support by more than half of the members present. Dr. Lo Wai Kwok, my question in the last round touched on minor works projects. They are different from signature projects. Back then, signature projects that cost up to $100 million can be determined by district councils. But because of the politicization of district councils, the matters became very messy, and some projects were aborted, and some district councils did not get to discuss some of the proposals because of filibustering. That is quite embarrassing. But minor works projects are different. When district councils function normally, when they were functioning normally, there was a good dialogue between district officers and DC members, and they could determine the priority of these projects, such as rain shelters and repair of rural roads, etc. I am not saying whether the approval power should rest with the district council. Rather, after improvement to district council structure, we should improve the system, and we must not overlook the importance of such projects to our community. People can have a sense of gain and happiness because their daily minor problems have been resolved. So no livelihood matter is really minor. Ms. Mack, thank you. There are two funding projects in DC. First is a rural minor works project, and the second is just minor works project. Usually, we talk about construction of rain shelters in rural areas, the railings for their staircases and steps, and improvement of rural roads, etc. District minor works projects could really benefit the community. And it's not just about where to build those rain shelters. The design of rain shelters have evolved with time. We used to have a few pillars with an acrylic shelter, and then we started to have some boards, and instead of acrylic, we have better materials. So we have incorporated views of DCs from the choice of locations, the design and materials used. We can improve these projects. I'm sure this will continue in the future. After all, they're there to reflect the views of the community. So where is a rain shelter needed, and which rural road has to be improved, and railings needed? District councils can relay the wish of the public so that they can benefit the community better. Instead of just a simple rain shelter with an acrylic cover, there can be better designed rain shelters. So in future, district council members and district officers can discuss to ensure that these projects are done properly. Mr. Kwok Wai Keung.
Thank you, Chairman. In the past, DCs had discussions on this. And very often, the DC of the 18 districts who get the same amount, say, for example, $100 million for, say, the signature project. We have discussions on whether the amount allocated to different districts should be related to the population size of the district. Say, for example, Wanchai district, there will be 10 seats. And then for the Eastern district, there will be 30 seats altogether. So in terms of the direct elections scale and also the number of seats, the two districts differ substantially. And there are similar examples in Kowloon and the New Territories. So when the administration handles certain projects and allocates funding, should the administrations be looking at the district's circumstances and allocate the funding accordingly? For some large districts, because the funding required is much bigger, then they may have to wait longer. So would there be a change to the mechanism? Second, I may sound long-winded, but I have to mention this. Different types of DC members may set up joint offices, but for the accountable OER, well, for some members they may set up 2 to 3 offices, but if they have joint offices, then that may mean 6 to 8 offices. Well, as far as I know, a district councillor can set up at most 1 office, and if he has to set up an office together with an indirectly elected member, well, he may not have sufficient financial means to do that. Because every DC member will get an even the same amount, it will be difficult for the directly elected DC member to set up joint offices. Of course, theoretically, there might be different possibilities of setting up joint offices, but then in reality, it may be difficult to do so. Like what the secretaries, Mr. Zhang said, for the district minor works funding and also community involvement funding, not every district gets the same amount. For larger districts, they get more funding. So some members also said that we should allocate funding in accordance with the special characteristics of the district. So, well, the $100 million is a special exercise. In 2013, the policy address said that there should be a dedicated fund to be allocated for each district to embark on a signature project. So that's why each district gets the same amount of funding. But for, say, the community involvement programs and also district minor works, not every district gets the same amount. Now, as for the question of joint offices, actually the number of DC members remains the same in the next term of DC. So if we have joint offices, then more service points can be set up. Will someone from the DCC be willing to cooperate with member returned by DCGC? Should he be paying a high proportion in terms of funding? Well, we've served as DC members for a long time. We understand that members who share the same vision may set up joint office, and if there is a service need in a certain district, two members may set up an office jointly to meet the service need. Let me cite an example. At the same time, last year, I set up a joint office with Mr. Chan, who was next to you. So I exhausted all my expenses, but then I would like to set up an office still. So Mr. Chan offered to set up a joint office with me, and as a result, I got another office. So members could work together to set up more service points for the benefits of the community. And this is also the goal of improving the governance at the district level. So DC members should not be just working at their own constituency. They should join forces with other DC members to better serve the community. If the DC members work in their own silos, and that means resources can never be put to the best use and people cannot be served appropriately. If we have joint offices, we can have more service points, and we also work as a team to serve the community. So members of the public are served not only by members from the DCGC, but also others returned through different channels. Mr. Chan comes from the financial sector, and his office was very helpful to residents in the district who have problems in their financial matters. So members returned through the different channels could work together to serve the community. Well, Mr. Chan is not just paying the largest share. Mr. Chan Xiu-hong. For candidates in the DCC and DCGC, they should get 9 nominations from the 3 committees. And for the candidate in DCGC, he should also get nominations from 50 electors in that constituency. For the candidate from DCC, he would choose a particular constituency because he is familiar with the district. It would not be difficult for him to get nomination from 50 electors. Why are you having this 50-member elector nomination criteria or requirement for the DCGC and not the DCC? Mr. Zhang, we would like the candidate to get a certain support from the community before he stands for election. I'm talking about those who wish to be indirectly elected. For candidates in the DCC, they would choose a particular area to stand for election. They would get the support from the 3 committees. But have you considered whether they should also get nomination from 50 electors from that constituency before he can stand for election? Now, DCC election is about the 3 committees. Members of the 3 committees are patriotic and have an affection for Hong Kong, and they are familiar with a particular district. And the candidates in that sector should get support from the 3 committees. So they need only support from the 3 committees. But for directly elected members, they should be voted into the office by electors in that district. So hence, we add in this 50 elector requirement. Chairman, I don't oppose getting nomination from the 3 committees. But if a candidate would like to be indirectly elected in a certain district, it will not be, if he chooses a district, it will not be difficult for him to get support from the 50 electors in that area. That candidate should reach out to the residents in that particular area. So would the administration consider imposing this requirement also on the indirectly elected constituency. So I understand the member's point. We would consider that. Mr. Holden Chow. I would like to put a question on setting up offices. After the DC member comes into the office, whether he is indirectly elected, direct elected, or appointed member, he should make the best use of his resources to set up offices. I believe that there are more offices in the future. While each term lasts for 4 years, I respect collaboration among district council members. We should respect the wishes for locations for offices. Will the government actually check on the distribution of these offices? And a district is maybe vast in size. We would like the offices to be evenly distributed geographically. Maybe some districts get a lot of DC members' offices, while others are not getting many offices. Would you be checking on the situation? Say, if you spot areas where there are not a lot of DC members' offices, would you be discussing with the DC members concerned for them to make adjustments? Would the government play that kind of role? Of course, you should respect the decisions of the DC members, but would the government nevertheless check on the locations of the offices? Yes, I can address that question. I believe that in the reformed DCs, the DC members will make sure that there are areas, well, every area is covered within their constituency. If there are districts or areas which are lacking service points, I believe the DC members will set up service points to serve the residents in that area. And also the DC chairman can also consider picking up certain locations for setting up service points. I believe the DC chairman will also try to coordinate things on that front. Is there any other question? If not, then that's it for this agenda item. The next meeting will or will not be held. So please watch out for our notification, because we are still waiting for submissions from the public. And once we've collected the submissions, I will discuss with the Secretariat and the Deputy Chairman as to whether we need another meeting to discuss the submissions received. Please watch out for the Secretariat's notice. Subject to whether there is another meeting, then we're done with the work of this subcommittee. If there is no third meeting, well, then the next meeting will be in fact be a Bills Committee meeting. We will proceed immediately with a close scrutiny. Any further question? If not, then thank you very much, the government team. AOB? No AOB. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.